A storm is brewing in the agriculture sector.
Trump's tariffs are no fun for farmers. Like me. Yeah, in one word, it's uncertainty. Contracts ripped apart overnight. Grain. Ships stalled at the docks. In just 1 year, 7 of America's closest agricultural partners walked away, choosing Canadian corn over U.S. supply. For American farmers, it's not just lost sales. It's bread missing from tables, livestock feed running dry, and small towns watching their lifeline vanish. One by one, nations are abandoning U.S. corn for Canada's stability, technology, and trust. Advantages America can no longer guarantee. And when you see who's on the list, you'll understand why this isn't just a market shift. It's a generational breaking point. Number 7, Egypt. The first crack in, the foundation. The collapse of American agricultural dominance didn't happen overnight. It began with 7 calculated betrayals that would reshape global food security forever. And it all started here. The phone call came at 3 a.m. Cairo time. An Egyptian grain buyer, voice tight with exhaustion, was canceling the largest corn contract his country had signed in 5 years. Not because of price, not because of quality, but because of something much more dangerous: uncertainty. We cannot build our bread supply on shifting sand, he said quietly before hanging up. That conversation marked the beginning of the end for American corn in Egypt. For over 30 years, Egyptian mills had relied on consistent shipments from Illinois and Iowa. The corn powered everything from livestock feed to flatbread that keeps 104 million Egyptians fed. It was a relationship built on trust, consistency, and the kind of agricultural reliability that only America seemed to offer. But then came the trade wars, the policy reversals, the midnight tweets that could reshape entire markets with 280 characters. Egyptian importers watched nervously as contracts with other countries got torn up overnight, shipments delayed by sudden tariff battles, and long-term agreements dissolved in political crossfire. Egyptian food security. Officials started losing sleep. Late-night emergency meetings became routine as they watched their agricultural lifeline become a political football. The Suez Canal brought them grain from around the world, but 67% of their corn came from a single source that seemed increasingly unpredictable. They started asking uncomfortable questions. What if a trade dispute erupted while their grain ships were mid-voyage? What if new sanctions suddenly made their corn shipments illegal? What if the political wind shifted and Egypt found itself cut off from its primary food source with zero warning? The breaking point came when a routine shipment was held up for 2 weeks due to enhanced documentation requirements that seemed designed more for political messaging than food safety. Egyptian bakeries started rationing flour, while perfectly good corn sat in American ports undergoing redundant inspections. The answer came from an unexpected place: Canada. Alberta Grain. Representatives didn't arrive with flashy presentations or aggressive sales pitches. They came with something far more valuable: boring, predictable reliability. No political drama, no midnight policy. Reversals. Just steady, consistent corn delivery with transparent pricing and ironclad contracts that wouldn't vanish because of a diplomatic spat. The Canadian approach was revolutionary in its simplicity. Fixed strict contracts guaranteed for 5 years. Delivery schedules that wouldn't change based on political moods. Documentation that met international standards without requiring constant clarification. Quality specifications that were consistent, measurable, and guaranteed. The switch happened gradually, then all at once. Egypt's first Canadian order was small, a test shipment of 50,000 tons. The grain arrived exactly on schedule. The paperwork was flawless. The quality exceeded expectations. No delays, no complications, no political theater. Egyptian mill operators couldn't believe the difference. Canadian corn arrived with moisture content precisely calibrated for their equipment. Processing was smoother, waste was reduced, production efficiency increased by 12% because the raw materials were so consistent. Within 18 months, Egypt had signed a 5-year agreement with Canadian suppliers worth $847 million annually. The contract included provisions for emergency deliveries during supply disruptions, backup shipping routes through multiple ports, and quality guarantees that actually meant something. American corn exporters didn't even know they were being replaced until the orders simply stopped coming. Phone calls went unreturned. Contract renewal discussions were postponed indefinitely. The relationship that had lasted 3 decades ended not with argument but with silence. Today, Egyptian mills process Canadian corn exclusively. The bread that feeds Cairo comes from Saskatchewan wheat fields. The livestock that supplies Egyptian markets eat Manitoba feed. And American farmers who once counted on Egyptian contracts are watching their grain rot in storage silos while their phone stays silent. The message from Egypt was clear, even if it was never said out loud. We need food security, not political theater. Egypt's departure sent ripples across global markets. But what happened next would prove that America's agricultural dominance was more fragile than anyone. Imagine number 6, South Korea. The tech giant's quiet revolution. Souls. Grain importers had always prided themselves on efficiency. In a country where technology transforms every industry, South Korean food processors expected their agricultural suppliers to keep pace. Real-time tracking, blockchain, verification, digital documentation that could be verified instantly from a smartphone. The future food supply chains were supposed to be smart, connected, and transparent. American corn suppliers were still operating like it was 1995. The breaking point came during a routine inspection at Bisusun Port. A shipment of American corn sat for 3 weeks while officials tried to verify its origin story. The paperwork was scattered across multiple systems. Some documents were handwritten. Others required phone calls to verify authenticity. The tracking system stopped updating once the grain left American soil. Korean food manufacturers watched in frustration as their production lines slowed down, while inspectors played detective with incomplete documentation. The corn was high quality, but proving it required an archaeological expedition through paper trails that belonged in a museum. Meanwhile, a Canadian shipment that arrived the same day was processed and distributed within 48 hours. Every kernel could be traced back to the specific field where it was grown. The digital documentation was instant, verifiable, and complete. South Korean buyers could track the grain's journey in real time from Canadian soil to Korean processing plants. The efficiency gap was staggering. South Korean food manufacturers weren't just buying corn. They were buying supply chain certainty. In an economy where just-in-time delivery means everything, American agricultural exports had become a bottleneck. Korean factories couldn't afford to have production lines idle while grain shipments disappeared into bureaucratic black holes. Canadian suppliers offered something revolutionary: complete transparency. Every step of the agricultural process was documented, verified, and accessible through secure digital platforms. Korean buyers could verify farming practices, inspect quality control measures, and track shipments in real time from their office computers. The technological integration was seamless. Canadian grain arrived with QR codes that linked to comprehensive databases showing everything from soil conditions to harvest dates, moisture content, protein levels, and contamination testing. Results were available instantly. Korean food processors could plan production schedules with unprecedented accuracy. When Samsung's food division needed 200,000 tons of corn for a new processing facility, they didn't even consider American suppliers. The bid went straight to Manitoba exporters who could guarantee precise delivery, windows, real-time tracking, and digital verification for every shipment. The reliability was absolute. Canadian suppliers met delivery deadlines within hours, not days. Quality specifications were consistent to decimal points. Documentation was perfect every single time. Korean manufacturers discovered they could operate with significantly lower inventory buffers because Canadian deliveries were so predictable. The shift accelerated when South Korean regulators introduced new traceability requirements. Food processors needed to track ingredients from farm to factory with documented precision. Canadian suppliers were already equipped with blockchain-based systems that made compliance effortless. American exporters were still figuring out how to digitize their record keeping. Korean consumers began demanding transparency about their food sources. They wanted to know where their ingredients came from, how they were grown, and what processing methods were used. Canadian suppliers could provide that information instantly through consumer accessible platforms. American suppliers couldn't even provide it to industrial customers. Within 2 years, South Korea had restructured its entire corn supply chain around Canadian partnerships. The efficiency gains were immediate: 34% faster processing times, 67% reduction in paperwork delays, and zero supply chain disruptions. Korean food manufacturers could focus on innovation instead of logistics management. The partnership extended beyond simple commodity trading. Korean technology. Companies began collaborating with Canadian agricultural firms to develop next-generation farming equipment. South Korean investment in Canadian agricultural technology increased by 340% as the two countries built integrated supply chains. American corn exporters watched helplessly as one of their most reliable customers disappeared, not through politics or trade disputes, but through simple technological obsolescence. In the digital age, being reliable wasn't enough anymore. You had to be smart, connected, and transparent. South Korea chose the future, and the future was speaking Canadian. But South Korea's technological precision was nothing compared to the supply chain revolution happening in Southeast Asia. Number 5, Vietnam. The pivot that changed everything. The text message was only 12 words long, but it rewrote the entire Southeast Asian grain trade, switching to Canadian suppliers effective immediately. Thanks for everything. That message sent from Vietnam's largest feed manufacturer to their American corn supplier ended a business relationship that had lasted over 2 decades. No negotiations, no warnings, no second chances. Just a quiet pivot that would reshape agricultural trade across the entire Pacific Rim. Vietnam's decision wasn't made in a boardroom. It was made in rice paddies and fish farms across the Mekong Delta, where millions of farmers were tired of watching their costs fluctuate based on American political moods. Every time tensions flared between Washington and Beijing, Vietnamese farmers paid the price. Corn prices spiked during trade wars. Shipments got delayed when diplomatic relations chilled. Feed costs became impossible to predict because they were tied to geopolitical theater instead of agricultural fundamentals. Vietnamese aquaculture operations, which produce shrimp and fish for global markets, were hemorrhaging money because of price volatility. Farmers couldn't plan breeding cycles when feed costs shifted weekly. Fish farm operators couldn't accept international contracts because they couldn't predict their input costs 6 months in advance. The crisis deepened when American trade policies began affecting Vietnamese exports to third countries. Vietnamese seafood producers found their products caught in trade disputes that had nothing to do with Vietnam. American agricultural supplies came with hidden political costs that rippled through Vietnam's entire economy. Vietnamese agricultural officials conducted a comprehensive review of their supply chain vulnerabilities. The results were shocking. 78 of their agricultural imports were either directly from the United States or routed through American-controlled infrastructure. A single political decision in Washington could disrupt food supplies for 97 million people. That vulnerability was unacceptable for a country trying to achieve food security independence. Canadian suppliers offered something revolutionary: predictable pricing isolated from political volatility. Canadian corn prices were based on agricultural fundamentals, not diplomatic tensions. Vietnamese buyers could plan operations years in advance because Canadian suppliers offered genuine price stability. The switch began with small orders. Vietnamese importers tested Canadian corn quality, delivery schedules, and pricing. Stability. What they found was remarkable. Not only was the corn identical in quality, but it came with something American suppliers couldn't offer: political neutrality. Canada wasn't engaged in trade wars with China. Canadian agricultural policy didn't shift with election cycles. Canadian exporters could offer 5-year contracts with fixed pricing that wouldn't evaporate because of diplomatic tensions. Vietnamese buyers could build business plans around predictable costs for the first time in years. The reliability revolution spread beyond corn. Vietnamese fish farmers discovered Canadian suppliers could provide comprehensive feed solutions tailored specifically for aquaculture operations. The grain was processed to exact specifications for fish nutrition, resulting in faster growth rates and higher survival rates. Vietnamese agricultural cooperatives began restructuring their entire supply chains around Canadian partnerships. The predictability allowed them to expand operations, invest in equipment upgrades, and accept international contract with confidence. Agricultural productivity increased by 23% within the first year as farmers could focus on production instead of supply chain management. The transformation was swift and total. Vietnam's corn imports shifted from 78% American in 2022 to 89% Canadian by 2025. The reliability revolution spread throughout Southeast Asia as other countries watched Vietnam achieve agricultural independence from American political volatility. The ripple effects reached every corner of Vietnamese agriculture. Pig farmers could plan breeding cycles without worrying about feed price volatility. Fish farms could accept international contract with confidence in their cost structure. Rural cooperatives could invest in expansion, knowing their input costs wouldn't fluctuate based on American political cycles. The partnership extended beyond simple commodity trading. Canadian agricultural technology companies began establishing research facilities in Vietnam. Joint development projects focus on tropical aquaculture, sustainable farming practices, and climate-adapted grain varieties. Vietnamese students receive scholarships to study agricultural technology at Canadian universities. Vietnam's defection sent shockwaves through agricultural markets worldwide, but nothing could have prepared American exporters for what was about to unfold in the world's most strategically important region. Number 4, Saudi Arabia, the Desert Kingdom's strategic shift. In Riyadh's gleaming Ministry of Agriculture building, a decision was made that would send shockwaves through global grain markets. Saudi Arabia, a country that imports 85% of its food, was restructuring its entire agricultural supply chain. And for the first time in 40 years, the United States wasn't invited to participate. The kingdom's food security strategy had always been simple: diversify suppliers to avoid dependence on any single country. But as they reviewed their import data, a troubling pattern emerged. Despite having suppliers from multiple countries, nearly everything still flowed through American uncontrolled trade routes and American-influenced systems. Saudi planners realized they had an illusion of diversification, not the real thing. The wake-up call came during a particularly volatile period in American trade policy. Saudi agricultural imports faced potential disruption 3 times in 18 months due to unrelated political tensions. Each time the kingdom's food supply became a bargaining chip in disputes that had nothing to do with agriculture. Saudi food security. Officials conducted war game scenarios to test their supply chain resilience. The results were terrifying. A single American policy decision could create food shortages within weeks. The kingdom that controlled global oil markets was dangerously vulnerable to foreign food politics. The breaking point came when a routine grain shipment was delayed for 10 days while American officials conducted enhanced security screenings that seemed designed more for diplomatic messaging than actual security. Saudi strategic planners watched their food imports become collateral damage in unrelated political theater. That's when Saudi strategists started looking north. Canada offered something revolutionary for Saudi food: security. Complete independence from American trade infrastructure. Canadian grain didn't root through American ports, American banks, or American political considerations. It was a truly independent supply chain that could operate regardless of diplomatic tensions elsewhere. The first Saudi-Canadian agricultural agreement was signed quietly with no media fanfare. A 5-year contract for 400,000 tons annually of Canadian corn, wheat, and canola. The terms were straightforward, fixed pricing, guaranteed delivery, and zero political interference clauses. What happened next surprised even Saudi planners. The Canadian supply chain wasn't just independent, it was superior. Canadian grain arrived with digital documentation that could be verified instantly. The blockchain tracking systems provided complete transparency from farm to port. Saudi inspectors could verify quality, origin, and handling procedures before shipments even left Canadian soil. The technological sophistication exceeded anything they had experienced with American suppliers. More importantly, Canadian suppliers understood Saudi requirements. The grain arrived pre-cleaned to exact specifications for desert storage conditions. Packaging was designed to withstand extreme temperatures and humidity fluctuations. Documentation was prepared according to Saudi import regulations without requiring constant clarification or rework. Canadian agricultural representatives worked directly with Saudi food security officials to optimize supply chain for reliability and efficiency. They established redundant shipping routes, backup storage facilities, and emergency delivery protocols. The partnership was strategic, not just commercial. American suppliers had treated Saudi Arabia like just another customer. Canadian suppliers treated them like a strategic partner whose food security was a matter of national importance. The relationship deepened when Canadian agricultural technology companies began establishing operations in Saudi Arabia. Joint ventures focused on desert agriculture, water-efficient farming, and sustainable food production. The technology transfer included advanced irrigation systems, climate-controlled storage facilities, and precision agriculture techniques. Within 3 years, Saudi Arabia's agricultural imports underwent a complete transformation. Canadian suppliers now provide 67 of the kingdom's grain imports. The reliability, quality, and political independence of Canadian agriculture has become a cornerstone of Saudi food security strategy. The partnership extended beyond simple commodity trading. Saudi Arabia invested $2.3 billion in Canadian agricultural infrastructure, including grain terminals, processing facilities, and research centers. The kingdom was building permanent agricultural relationships that couldn't be disrupted by political volatility. The shift sent a clear message across the Middle East. If Saudi Arabia could achieve food independence from American suppliers, so could other regional powers. The kingdom's success with Canadian agriculture became a template for regional food security that other countries began studying and replicating. Losing Saudi Arabia was devastating, but American agriculture could survive without the Middle East. What happened next, however, would strike at the very heart of America's agricultural empire. Number 3, Mexico. The neighbor's betrayal. The betrayal cut deepest because it came from next door. For over 70 years, Mexico had been America's most reliable agricultural customer. Cross-border grain trade was so routine, it barely registered in diplomatic conversations. Mexican tortilla factories, livestock operations, and food processors built their entire supply chains around American corn. It was more than trade. It was family. But family relationships require trust. And trust, once broken, is almost impossible to repair. The fracture began with policy uncertainty. Mexican food manufacturers watched nervously as American trade policies shifted with election cycles. NAFTA became USMCA with little warning. Tariff threats appeared and disappeared based on immigration disputes that had nothing to do with agriculture. Routine agricultural shipments became political footballs in unrelated negotiations. Mexican buyers found themselves trapped in a relationship where the rules could change overnight. Contracts that seemed secure became vulnerable to political theater. Trade agreements that had operated smoothly for decades suddenly required constant renegotiation because of disputes over border policies, immigration, or manufacturing. The tipping point came when a routine corn shipment was delayed for 3 weeks due to enhanced inspection procedures that seemed designed more for political theater than food safety. Mexican tortilla factories ran dangerously low on raw materials while their corn sat in American border warehouses undergoing redundant inspections. Mexican food security officials watched in horror as their primary food supply became a bargaining chip in immigration negotiations. Tortilla production slowed. Livestock feed supplies dwindled. Food processors began protocols while perfectly good corn sat immobilized by political posturing. The economic damage was immediate and severe. Mexican food manufacturers lost $340 million in production delays during that 3-week period. Tortilla prices spiked across Mexico as supply chains struggled with artificial shortages. Mexican consumers paid the price for American political theater. That's when Mexican importers started asking dangerous questions. If America could disrupt food supplies over unrelated political issues, what would happen during a real diplomatic crisis? If routine corn shipments could become political weapons, how could Mexico ensure food security for 130 million people? The answer came from Canada in the form of a proposal that seemed almost too good to be true. Canadian suppliers offered Mexico something unprecedented: agricultural trade completely isolated from political considerations. No matter what happened diplomatically between Ottawa and Mexico City, grain shipments would continue uninterrupted. No enhanced inspections, no policy reversals, no political theater. The first Mexican-Canadian agricultural pilot program was small, just 10,000 tons of corn delivered through Pacific Coast ports, but the results were revolutionary. Canadian grain arrived exactly on schedule with perfect documentation. Quality exceeded expectations, and most importantly, there were no political complications. Mexican food manufacturers discovered that Canadian suppliers offered advantages beyond political reliability. The grain quality was superior, arriving with moisture content perfectly calibrated for Mexican processing equipment. Canadian exporters had studied Mexican manufacturing requirements and customized their processing accordingly. The shift from America's closest agricultural neighbor sent shockwaves through the entire North American grain trade. If Mexico could find better reliability elsewhere, every other American agricultural customer started questioning their own supply chain vulnerability. American farmers lost more than just their largest export market. They lost the trust of their closest neighbor. And in agriculture, trust travels faster than grain shipments. Number 2, Japan, the precision economy's perfect partner. In Tokyo's financial district, grain importers stared at computer screens, showing something unprecedented. For the first time in 60 years, Japanese corn imports from the United States had fallen below 50% of total volume. The decline wasn't gradual. It was a controlled demolition executed with the precision that Japanese industry was famous for. The shift began in quality control laboratories where Japanese food manufacturers discovered something troubling about American grain shipments. Consistency was declining. Moisture content varied between shipments. Protein levels fluctuated unpredictably. For an economy built on precision manufacturing, American agricultural exports have become unacceptably inconsistent. Japanese food processors needed corn that met exact specifications every single time. A variance of even 2% in. Moisture content could disrupt entire production lines, delay shipments, and damage relationships with international customers who expected Japanese-level quality control. American suppliers couldn't deliver that level of consistency. Canadian suppliers could. The transformation began when Mitsubishi's agricultural division tested Canadian corn in their most demanding application, premium livestock, feed for Wagyu beef production. The requirements were extraordinary. Protein content had to be within 0.5% of specification. Moisture levels couldn't vary more than 1% between shipments. Zero contamination was acceptable. Canadian grain not only met these specifications, it exceeded them. Every shipment arrived with detailed analysis, reports showing exact nutritional content. Moisture levels were precisely controlled using advanced drying technology. Protein content was tested and verified at multiple points in the supply chain. The consistency was remarkable, but quality was just the beginning. Canadian suppliers offered something that revolutionized Japanese grain imports: predictive delivery. Using advanced logistics technology, Canadian exporters could predict delivery times within hours, not days. Japanese manufacturers could plan production schedules with unprecedented accuracy. Just-in-time manufacturing, the cornerstone of Japanese efficiency, became possible for agricultural inputs. The cultural fit was perfect. Canadian agricultural businesses operated with the same attention to detail, quality control, and customer service that Japanese companies expected from their suppliers. Meetings started on time. Commitments were honored precisely. Quality problems were addressed immediately. American suppliers, by contrast, often seemed casual about quality variations, delivery delays, and customer communication, what they considered acceptable agricultural tolerances. The Japanese considered unacceptable business practices. The shift accelerated when Japanese regulators introduced new traceability requirements for imported food ingredients. Canadian suppliers were already equipped with blockchain-based tracking systems that made compliance effortless. American suppliers struggled to provide the detailed documentation Japanese regulations required. Within 4 years, Canadian suppliers captured 67% of Japanese corn imports. The relationship extended beyond simple commodity trading. Canadian and Japanese companies formed joint ventures to develop specialized grain varieties. Technology sharing agreements improved both counts' agricultural efficiency. The transformation was complete when Japan's largest food conglomerate announced a 10-year exclusive partnership with Canadian grain cooperatives. The announcement included plans for joint research facilities, shared logistics infrastructure, and coordinated marketing in third country markets. American grain exporters found themselves shut out of one of their most profitable and reliable markets. Japan hadn't just found a new supplier, they'd found a better business partner. The precision economy had chosen precision, agriculture, and that choice was Canadian. Number 1, China. The superpower strategic pivot. The meeting took place in a nondescript office building in Beijing, but its consequences would reshape global agriculture forever.